Midnight fog rolls over a quiet road outside San Francisco. A car idles under a lone streetlight. Footsteps approach. A voice, calm and steady. Do not move. In the next hours, the city will wake up to headlines and a symbol on the front page. A crosshair, like a rifle scope. The writer calls himself Zodiac. He promises more, and he keeps his word. Picture the Northern California map. Small towns hugging the bay. Stretches of two-lane highway, a lake with rocky shores and brown grass. On certain nights, something terrible broke the routine. A parked car, two people together, a figure stepping out of darkness, speaking in a low, even voice. And then, afterward, a new message would land on a newsroom desk, stamped with a symbol and a tone that was both mocking and strangely formal. The symbol, circle and cross, looked like a target or a compass with no directions. The writer's name, Zodiac, was part myth, part brand, and it stuck. He claimed attacks, taunted police, and sent ciphers cut into neat blocks of symbols. He promised bombings that never came, explained his motives in chilling, almost theatrical lines, and threatened strangers like a storyteller trying to hold the audience rapt. The effect worked. The Bay Area, already a place of protest and change in the late 1960s, gained a new anxiety. Headlines carried ciphers and ultimatums. The case wasn't only about evidence in a lab, it was also about pressure in the press. But let's step into the scenes themselves, one by one, the way a detective might open old folders and lay photos on the table. A dark stretch of road on a winter night. A parked car. Two teenagers. Someone approaches. The quiet of the countryside turns into violence in seconds. There are few witnesses, and afterward the scene is more questions than answers. Ballistics to measure, footprints to find, fragments to bag. On paper, it is a cluster of data points. In life, it is an explosion that shatters families and presses officers to work until dawn. It's late 1968, and Northern California is about to learn a new word, Zodiac. Though nobody knows it yet, the first ripples have begun. Months pass. A warm night, a local lover's lane. A car pulls in, music on the radio, maybe a tired joke between friends. Then headlights flare behind them. A man steps out and comes up to the window. There is a gun. He fires. It happens fast, and it looks like a senseless attack, until the phone rings not long after. A calm male voice reports the crime as if he were the dispatcher, citing details nobody should know yet. He speaks with control. He hangs up. Now, the newsrooms. Imagine editors sorting morning stacks of mail. Ads, press releases, letters from readers. One envelope is different. Inside are words that feel like a script for a show you wish didn't exist. The writer takes credit for attacks, gives details, and includes a cipher. Rows of symbols arranged like a crossword puzzle, designed by somebody with a grudge. He signs with the crosshair. He names himself. That's the moment a local killer becomes a public figure. A cipher is a dare. It is a message that says, if you are clever, meet me here. One of Zodiac's early ciphers would be cracked, not by a government lab, but by a school teacher and his wife at their kitchen table, pencil in hand, patience and pattern finding in their fingers. That detail still amazes people. Think about it. An ordinary home turns into a small code-breaking room. A couple leans over a page and taps letters in, and soon a hidden message surfaces. The text is disturbing and grandiose. The grammar shakes. The tone is chilling. It is not a confession. It is a performance. Summer again. A lake outside the city, with rolling hills and a shoreline of golden brush. Two college students rest on a blanket. They watch the water, the clouds. A man approaches wearing a hood with the crosshair symbol. and a crude bib or chess piece. It is a costume no one should ever see in real life, like a mask pulled from a nightmare. He speaks evenly, claims he is a prison escapee, asks for keys and money. He binds them with rope. Then the knife comes out. The scene is calculated and slow, like the killer decided that fear itself was part of the script. Yet after the attack, something else. He takes a marker and writes on a victim's car door, dates, places, that symbol again, turning a personal item into a bulletin board. And later, the phones ring once more. The calm voice returns. Now the city. A taxi ride through the grid of San Francisco streets, the patient blinking of traffic lights. A passenger directs the driver to a quiet intersection in a residential neighborhood. The car stops. A shot. The killer takes a piece of the driver's shirt, as if collecting a receipt for the crime. In the days to come, envelopes arrive with proof, fabric sealed inside, making sure no one doubts who wrote this time. The message isn't just I did it, it's I choreograph the chaos and I author the story. This is the shape of the Zodiac. Violence followed by correspondence, as if the pen and the weapon are two halves of the same tool. The crimes range from very public to very isolated, but in the letters, the same voice returns, smug, instructive, taunting, oddly polite and cruel. He explains, demands and threatens. He plays with names and symbols. He tells the world he's collecting points. He suggests bombs that would target school buses. Whether those threats were real or not, the paper trail pushes the city toward fear. Parents change routes. Cops saturate corners. Reporters check their mail twice. And still, the shadow that speaks in symbols is always just out of reach. An investigation grows, many investigations actually, because jurisdictions collide. County sheriffs, city police, highway patrol, the state, and at times even federal agents, each hold pieces. Back then, information doesn't travel as instantly as we imagine it should. Memos can get stuck. Radio calls get missed. One department looks at a fingerprint while another studies ballistics from a different case. A third stares down an envelope holding carefully cut paper, counting straight edges and imagining the hands that touched it. The physical evidence is a puzzle that edges close to a picture and then backs away. Ballistics link some scenes. At least one scene is different. A knife instead of a gun, a ritual feel, a handwritten note left behind. Witnesses describe slightly different faces, height, haircut, glasses, or no glasses. Was he overweight, or just wearing a jacket that hung loose? Human memory in stress is a fragile film. You can see the shapes, but the details blur. Investigators know this. They also know it's all they have. And the letters keep coming. One day, a newsroom clerk slits an envelope and a piece of a blood-stained shirt falls to the desk. Another day, the writer describes a crime scene with comfortable specificity, like someone rewatching a movie they directed. On a different morning, a new cipher arrives. To open mail in those years in that city is to flinch, hope for a theatre flyer, fear a manifesto. And yet, the public plays a role here too. Thousands of readers trace those symbols in their morning paper, playing at codebreaking like a crossword puzzle with stakes. People form clubs in their heads. Theories bloom on porches and in bars. Names surface, then get discredited. Officers follow tips and knock on doors, then find their work criticized on editorial pages or in chain letters passed among hobby detectives. The Zodiac becomes more than a person. He becomes a riddle the whole region wants to answer. Let's pause to look at the mind behind the letters. Not the identity, which we do not have, but the style, which we do. Zodiac writes with a posture of control. He narrates himself as clever and uncatchable, scolding police and instructing the public. He likes neatness, block letters, measured lines, a tone that tries to feel superior. His grammar is odd in places, but his intent is always clear. He wants to be read. He is not satisfied to harm. He needs to be seen harming. He needs your attention. He is the rare criminal who tries to design his own myth. And for a while, he succeeds. That makes this case different from many others. Usually, the forensic trail is everything. DNA now, prints then, fibers, tire tracks, trajectories. In this case, the forensic trail matters, but the text trail matters too. Police must become a kind of literary audience, reading tone and syntax, while also testing paper and ink under microscopes. Every envelope is two things at once, evidence and theatre. Now we come to the suspects, carefully. Over the years, several people have been named in private conversations, in public forums, and in articles. Some details line up for one suspect. A job that gave him time at night. A physical resemblance to a composite sketch. A piece of writing that echoes Zodiac's cadence. Another suspect has a history that raises eyebrows. A pattern of behavior that makes detectives lean forward. Maybe even some items at home that look like tools our killer might use. And yet, in each case, an important piece is missing. A hard link that survives a courtroom. Fingerprints here don't match a print there. A DNA snippet says no. A timeline stumbles on a work record or a bus ticket. A witness recants or says what they were sure of years ago doesn't feel as certain now. So we learn to talk about suspects like you, talk about weather forecasts, cautious, conditional. Names are just names until proven. Some are more promising than others, and some are noise. What rises from that mix is not a person, but a profile. Someone comfortable with planning, someone who reads, someone who manipulates order into his chaos, using a straight edge on both paper and people, and someone who can move through public space without drawing attention. No dramatic cloak, no obvious limp, no movie villain glare, just another face in a crowd. One theme that sits at the center of the case is consistency versus chaos. Investigators ask, are all these attacks the work of one person? The letters say yes. The method sometimes says maybe. The weapons change. The environments change. From car windows to lakeside blankets to a taxi's front seat. The only constant is the voice in letters and phone calls, which could mean a single hand or could mean a person who is eager to take credit for more than he did. In real life, cases are not as clean as movies. People copycat. Journalists make leaps to fill space. Fear ties unrelated threads together because fear hates mess. It wants one explanation. The truth may be a cluster shaped like a single shadow. Let's talk about the moment when the public began to push back. Early ciphers get broken. Letters are analyzed for patterns, spelling quirks, repeated phrases, a way of signing off. Amateur sleuths build their own dossiers, some carefully sourced, some wildly imaginative. New technology comes online decades later. Computer-aided codebreaking, advanced fingerprint analysis, DNA techniques that, at least in other cases, find answers no lab could see in the 1970s. Hope flares. Headlines promise progress. Then reality returns like a tide going out, revealing sand where you wanted stone. Leads fade, people retire. Files move from active to cold. Still, every so often, something new buzzes through the community. An old cipher solved by a team of codebreakers working across time zones. Another look at a piece of evidence. An official comment that says, We're reviewing without saying more. The case lives in those headlines like a heartbeat. An old voice tries to speak from paper, and we lean in again. But the story isn't only about this one offender. It is also about how institutions communicate, how media shape fear, and how a city decides who to trust when trust is expensive. Back then, police departments guarded their case files tightly, sometimes to keep a suspect off balance, sometimes because that's how it had always been done. Newsrooms had to decide, print the letter or hold it back. If they printed it, they could be spreading fear or encouraging copycats. If they didn't, they could miss a piece of evidence that might lead to a tip. Those are real decisions made by real people at real desks, not abstract debates in hindsight. And the killer understood those pressures. He pressed on them like buttons. There's a particular image that sticks with me. A clerk in a newsroom slicing open envelopes with a dull blade while the coffee cools. That small motion, paper against metal, became part of a city's ritual. Not just, what's the news, but what's the message this time? A killer wrote himself into the life of a metropolis, and for a stretch of years, everyone lived with it. What do we learn standing here, staring at pinpoints on an old map and hard lines of text? First, we learn that certainty is rare and precious. It lives at the crossing of physical evidence and verified context. Second, we learn that narrative power matters. The Zodiac didn't only attack bodies, he attacked a story-hungry culture and fed it chapters. Third, we learn humility. With all our advances, a few mysteries stay closed, as if a city has rooms that never unlock, no matter how many keys we cut. But that's not the same as defeat. Cold isn't dead. Cases like this one move not just with time, but with tools and with new eyes. A detail overlooked in the 1970s can surface in a digitized archive today. A cipher that felt hopeless can crack under a modern algorithm. A print smudge that once looked like a smudge can become a useful partial under different light. Families don't forget. Some detectives don't either. And even if the person who called himself Zodiac is long gone, naming the truth still matters. It matters to history. It matters to grieving people who deserve it. It matters because justice is not only a sentence in a courtroom. It is also a sentence in a story where we tell what happened as clearly as we can. Let's return to scenes, briefly, carefully, through the eyes of the survivors and the first responders. A young person lying still, counting breaths, choosing to play dead because moving could mean the end. That's courage. A citizen who sees something odd near a taxi, calls it in, gives what details they can under stress. That's duty. An officer who searches a park with a flashlight beam, slicing the trees, hoping the next step is towards safety, not into an ambush. That's service. When we talk about this case, those people walk with us. The Zodiac wanted to be the center. He never was. The center was always the people who endured him and the people who chased him. There's another truth. Violent crime leaves behind small, practical echoes that newspapers rarely print. Dinner tables with empty seats. Teachers who adjust lessons because a student is suddenly quiet. Partners who learn to sleep with the light on. A community that changes habits at dusk. When you consider those echoes, it changes how you speak about a case. The sensational shrinks. The human grows. So yes, we talk about letters and ciphers, but we also remember the real daily cost. Switch scenes again. A detective's office late at night, stacks of reports, a tape recorder on the desk, a corkboard with thread between pins. A cliché, sure, but useful. The detective runs a finger along a route on a city map, He marks a time. He circles a witness name. He writes a small note. Check phone booth near. Information that, if you were to see it in a TV show, you'd assume would break the case in the next act. In real life, it might go nowhere, or it might matter years later when someone else compares it with a piece of paper from a different file cabinet. That quiet work is the opposite of the killer's theater, and yet it's the only path that leads anywhere. So where does that path lead now? It leads to a shelf where case boxes sit, to labs where evidence is carefully retested, to community rooms where people still meet to discuss the case, to online forums where archivists and coders sift. It leads to classrooms where the story is taught as an example of investigative complexity. It leads to families who, no matter what the headlines say, wake each day and carry on. It leads to police departments that adopt better ways to share information across lines on a map, because they remember when those lines slowed them down. Perhaps you're thinking, was the Zodiac one man, or a myth layered on top of several offenders? You are not alone. Reasonable people disagree. The best answer is careful. The letters point to a single voice. The crimes vary in method. It's possible one person did them all. It's also possible that a killer took credit for more than he did. Police live in those possibilities. So should we. At this point in our report, some viewers want names. I understand the pull. Names feel like answers. But a responsible story isn't a dartboard. It's a ledger. For any person discussed publicly, there are pieces that line up and pieces that do not. If a fingerprint or DNA rules them out, that matters more than a photo that looks similar to a sketch. Sketches are impressions. Lab results are evidence. And evidence is what brings closure that lasts. So the most honest ending for now is an open door, not a slam. The city still stands. The fog still rolls in at night. Headlines move on. Yet the case lingers like an unfinished letter on a reporter's desk. Somewhere among those pages, typed, handwritten, filmed, recorded, are clues that, together, could resolve the outline that has haunted people for decades. If you feel frustrated that it's still unsolved, hold that feeling. It's a sign you care about the truth. One last image, a blank sheet of paper, a pen resting at the top edge, the circle and cross symbol drawn slowly, almost carefully. You can see the hand in your mind, measuring the angles, pressing ink down, reloading the legend. That page will go into an envelope and travel through a world of machines and hands before landing in a newsroom or a police department. Then knives slit it open and the words spill out like a small explosion. That's how he made himself big, by making his voice unavoidable. The story of the Zodiac is also the story of how a community decided to answer. Not by surrendering to fear, but by counting facts, comparing notes, watching out for one another, and refusing to give him the last word. And yes, after all this time, something remains. A question hovering over the bay, over the archives, over the living rooms of the families who lost so much, who wrote those letters, who stepped out of the dark and into these scenes, then disappeared. The question is heavy. We carry it together. If you ever find yourself driving a quiet road at night and a crosswalk sign blinks a steady metronome of light, you might feel a flicker of that old anxiety. The point of telling this story isn't to feed that fear. It's to learn what fear tried to hide. That careful work, honest reporting, and community memory win in the end, even if the signature on the last page is still missing. That is the report. That is the shape of the shadow and the people who walked through it. If this deep dive kept you watching, do me a favor. Hit like so more people see it. Subscribe for more true crime told with facts first, and comment below. I want to hear from you. Which single detail in this case feels most important to you? The phone calls, the ciphers, the shirt fragment, or something else entirely? And why?